Hello, family. Welcome to Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means the world to us. Also, leave us a comment and share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so. The city dawned shrouded in mist, a pale veil softening the edges of towering skyscrapers and ancient stone cathedrals alike. Isabel and Ma stood at the window of a modest apartment, the usual hum of the morning traffic barely audible beneath the quiet breath of early September. The sky was a wash of silver and pale rose, a promise of relentless heat by midday. She pressed a hand to the cool glass, eyes scanning the awakening streets far below. A river of people, destinations unknown, all weaving through their lives like threads pulled inexorably toward the fabric of a city that never truly slept. Isabel's reflection merged with the cityscape behind her, a ghostly overlay, a determined woman shaped by discipline and intellect but shadowed by invisible burdens. Dark hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, eyes the steady green of a forest deep and impenetrable. Behind the calm exterior, a mind raced with questions about the new case she had just been handed, questions that already sparked a subtle fire beneath her measured composure. A low chime from her desk broke the silence, the soft vibration of a phone signaling the arrival of a new message. She crossed the room with fluid grace and lifted the device to her ear, hearing the clipped voice of her superior, Director Graves. "Isabel, I'll keep this brief. You're assigned to investigate Dominic Varela. He's been under the radar for years. Too much wealth, too many rumors. We need to know if he's laundering money, using influence, or worse. Discreetly." Isabel's brows furrowed. "Any background I should know?" "His power base is sprawling, international. High risk, high profile. If this goes sideways, it'll be on your shoulders." Graves' voice hardened. "But there's also something else. Be careful. Dominic has a reputation." "Understood," Isabel said, voice steady but her pulse quickened. She ended the call and let the phone slip onto the desk. Dominic Varela. The name had floated through whispers in business circles, a man cloaked in mystery and luxury, his empire glittering like gold yet rumored to cast long shadows beneath. A man as enigmatic as he was formidable, and it was up to her to unravel the truth. 2 days later, she found herself standing before the glass doors of the Varela Group headquarters, a beacon of sleek, modern design rising defiantly among the older, worn stone facades of the district. Her tailored navy suit blended into the sea of professionals moving briskly around her, but Isabel exuded an aura of quiet command that set her apart. As the heavy doors parted, the lobby embraced her with an intoxicating mix of polished marble and subtle scents, citrus and something woodsy, almost primal. She moved confidently to the reception desk, where a woman with perfectly coiffed hair and an inscrutable smile greeted her. "Ms. Ma, Mr. Varela is expecting you. Please, follow me." The elevator ride was smooth, the walls lined with abstract art that contrasted with the industrial precision of the building. When the doors opened to the top floor, Isabel stepped into a world suspended between business and pleasure, a vast office bath in golden afternoon light, filled with sleek furniture and an array of exotic plants. And then he appeared. Dominic Varela was a striking figure, even from a distance, the embodiment of effortless power and charm. Broad shoulders swathed in a finely tailored dark suit, a crisp white shirt open at the collar. His skin was warm, bronzed by the sun, with eyes that caught and held the light, dark, smoldering, impossible to look away from. He smiled, a slow, confident curve that both welcomed and challenged. "Ms. Ma, I presume." His voice was deep, smooth as aged whiskey, low enough to stir something dangerous beneath her ribs. She nodded, resisting the surge of heat that flickered across her skin. "Mr. Varela, thank you for seeing me." He extended a hand, callous but gentle, and she took it, noting the surprising softness in his grip. "Please, call me Dominic. We're not strangers, after all." Isabel regarded him carefully, noting the subtle lines at the corners of his eyes, signs of a man who had both laughed and endured much. "Then you know why I'm here." His eyes darkened slightly, shadows hinting at layers beneath the polished surface. "Curiosity," he said, "or suspicion?" "Professional duty," Isabel answered, voice crisp. Dominic's grin widened. "Ah, the eternal dance between truth and trust." They moved to the seating area, leather chairs arranged with deliberate intimacy. The conversation began with polite formalities, but beneath the surface simmered a charged undercurrent, a mutual probing dressing gloss and innuendo. "Your reputation precedes you," Dominic said, swirling a tumbler of amber liquid. "A woman who sees clearly through the smoke." Isabel's gaze held steady. "I see what is there to be seen, and what is hidden." He regarded her for a long moment, then leaned forward slightly, as if sharing a secret. "And what have you seen so far?" She hesitated, weighing her words. Not enough to accuse, but enough to be curious. Dominic chuckled, low, warm, and unsettling. "Curiosity," he mused, "a dangerous thing for a woman like you." Their eyes locked in a silent exchange, a challenge, an invitation, a tantalizing promise of battles yet to come. Isabel's heart beat unevenly, her professional mask slipping just the faintest crack. Here was a man who stirred something long dormant, a magnetic force pulling her into a game far more personal than any file or ledger. As the sun set beyond the windows, casting the room into a golden haze, Isabel realized this was no ordinary investigation. This was a collision of worlds, of discipline and desire, of light and dark, and she was about to step right into the storm. The fading light softened the sharp edges of the room, turning Dominic's features into a sculpture of shadow and gold. Isabel studied him, every detail carefully logged, every gesture dissected. Yet, no matter how logical she tried to be, her senses rebelled against the clinical separation she sought to maintain. Dominic's voice broke the silence. "Tell me, Isabel, how does one look beneath the glitter of a man's fortune?" She met his gaze without flinching, the green of her eyes unblinking and steady. "By following the money, tracing the path from who benefits to who suffers." His smile was amused, almost conspiratorial, straight to the moral heart of the matter. "I'm not here to moralize," she said, "only to uncover the truth." He leaned back, one hand draped across the armrest, the other casually tapping the side of his tumbler. "The truth," he mused, "is a dangerous thing. Sometimes it exposes monsters, sometimes it produces saints, or saints that burn in hell." Isabel's lips twitched into a half-smile, appreciating the metaphor while staying vigilant. "That sounds like you face your share of hellfires." Dominic's eyes darkened for a heartbeat, betraying a shadow beneath the charm. "More than a share, but I'm still standing." The silence hung between them, thick, magnetic. Isabel shifted slightly, adjusting her posture to regain control. "Why invite me here if you suspect I'm a threat?" "Because," he said softly, "there's power in being seen without pretense. And sometimes the best defense is to let the enemy in close enough to watch the glint in their eyes." There was something almost hypnotic in his candor. Isabel felt the air thin, the space between them charged with electric anticipation. Looking down, she caught the subtle scar running from Dominic's left temple, disappearing beneath his collar. "What's the story there?" He touched the spot briefly, eyes narrowing momentarily. "Old wound. Reminds me that no matter the wealth, fortune can't protect you from pain." A flicker of empathy stirred inside her, a crack in the fortress of professionalism she'd built from years of hard, single-minded work. Their attendant returned quietly, holding a sleek tablet. "Mr. Varela, your afternoon appointments are all set," she said, eyes flicking briefly toward Isabel with a blend of curiosity and subtle warning. Dominic's smile was sharp yet inviting. "Duty calls. But I insist, Isabel, this is only the beginning." As he rose, the magnetic aura of his presence enveloped the room like a tide pulling at the shores of a resolve. Isabel stood as well, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, her mind a chaotic well beneath the calm exterior. She would uncover Dominic's secrets, she promised herself. But the man, his personality, his smoldering intensity, had already claimed a corner of her thoughts. Outside, the city light began to glitter against the encroaching night, promising new stories, new battles. And this one would be hers. Back in her apartment, Isabel sat at a desk surrounded by scattered documents, her laptop open to encrypted files on Dominic's complex financial holdings. The numbers and codes blurred, but her mind replayed the afternoon. His confidence was intoxicating, the way he navigated power like a dance choreographed long before she arrived. But there was something more, raw, lead. A hunger not just for control but connection, reckless and profound. She pulled up his social calendar for the upcoming week, a series of exclusive functions, private gatherings, and clandestine meetings. Her stake in this investigation could no longer remain distant. She would need to infiltrate this world, not just as an observer, but a participant. The thought ignited a mix of fear and excitement. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from her sister, Elena. Be careful, ISA. Power like it doesn't just burn wallets, it burns souls. Isabel smiled faintly, fingers hovering above the keyboard. She couldn't stop now, not when the line between professional and personal was already blurring dangerously. Tomorrow's challenge awaited. The morning air was crisp yet heavy with promise as Isabel made her way through the narrow streets toward one of Dominic Varela's private gatherings. The event was being held at an old art gallery, a fusion of raw concrete walls and vibrant modern installations, a perfect setting for Dominic's carefully crafted persona, cultured, influential, untouchable. Isabel's tailored black dress hugged her figure with effortless elegance, concealing the subtle tension she carried beneath her polished exterior. Tonight, the rules of engagement were different. No more corporate detachment. Here was a world where secrets were whispered behind glints of crystal glasses, where power was exchanged in smiles and silences, and where every subtle glance could signal allegiance or betrayal. She glanced at the forged invitation Dominic had sent, an explicit invitation, both a gesture of control and an unspoken test. Upon entering, Isabel was immediately enveloped by the hum of low conversation and the heady scent of expensive perfume and rare tobacco. The room swirled with people draped in velvet, silk, and stories so deep they could drown an ocean. Isabel navigated the crowd with practiced ease, her sharp eyes gathering data even as she engaged in small talk that danced over politics, art, and commerce. A waiter offered her champagne, which she accepted with a polite nod. Then he appeared. Dominic's presence cut through the haze like a knife. He was standing near a striking sculpture, a cascading mass of twisted steel shaped like flames frozen mid-roll, his posture relaxed but undeniably commanding. When their eyes met across the room, a current pulled both of them like a magnet. Dominic broke into a slow, knowing smile and approached, closing the distance until their breaths mingled. "Isabel," he said smoothly, voice low, "you wear intrigue like a second skin." She met his gaze, steady but roused with the thrill of being seen beneath the surface. "You're making me dangerously transparent." "Transparency is only dangerous if you feel what lies underneath," he murmured. "But you're learning quickly. Tell me, what have you discovered about me in this gilded cage?" Isabel's eyes twinkled with guarded amusement. More than enough to be curious, less than enough to condemn. Dominic's laugh was deep and rich, a sound that wrapped around her like velvet and steel. "Careful, Isabel. The deeper you go, the more intoxicating the echoes get." Their conversation danced on the knife's edge between challenge and invitation. Dominic leaned in slightly, a whisper of cologne and something darker, something primal stirring a flame inside her she hadn't been prepared for. Suddenly, the scene shifted. Dominic reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek, a fleeting touch, but charged with irresistible tension. The world narrowed until only the heat between them seemed real. "Tell me," he whispered, "does the investigator's heart ever skip a beat?" Her response was a barely audible breath, a secret confession. Later, in a secluded alcove behind the gallery's main hall, they fell into the shadows together, the city noise muffled into insignificance. Dominic's hands were firm but reverent as he spoke softly about a life forged not just in deals but in scars, losses hidden behind his silence. Isabel listened, sensing the layers beneath the bravado, the man who was both a fortress and a storm. When their lips finally met, it was a collision, a reckless surrender to desire that defied logic, a mingling of power and vulnerability. The heat between them ignited rapidly, releasing years of restraint and repression. For a moment, professionally and personally blurred into one, and Isabel realized a mission she once thought clear was now a labyrinth of temptation and danger. The faint hum of laughter and music drifted from the gallery's grand hall, but in the dimly lit alcove, time seemed to suspend itself. Isabel's heart raced, each beat echoing the dangerous rhythm of desire and defiance. Dominic's gaze held haze, a fusion of intensity and something softer, pain woven tightly with need. His hand slid from her cheek down to her wrist, fingertips tracing skin like fire. "Isabel," he breathed, voice husky. "There's a truth no ledger can capture, the pulse beneath the gold." She swallowed hard, every ounce of self-control battling to stay intact. "I'm not sure I'm ready to follow it," she whispered. He smiled, enigmatic and knowing. Sometimes a journey is the only way to know. Without another word, he closed the distance, lips pressing against hers with an urgency that spoke of both hunger and restraint. The kiss deepened quickly, a clash of fire and want, the world outside fading to a dull murmur. Isabel felt the scratch of stubble against her cheek as Dominic's hands roamed cautiously, memorizing curve with a reverence that belied his intensity. Despite the abandon, her mind raced, fighting whispers of caution. What was she becoming? What price would a desire demand? A faint sound at the gallery's entrance startled them. Dominic pulled back reluctantly, eyes gleaming with dark amusement. "We should not get lost too quickly," he murmured, fingers brushing her temple. "The dance has only begun." Isabel nodded slowly, breath uneven. Collecting herself, she straightened her dress and followed him back into the bright chaos of the party. Throughout the evening, they walked a calculated tightrope of interaction, whispered words laden with double meanings, fleeting touches disguised as casual grazes, a constant game of possession and release. At one point, Dominic leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "You intrigue me more than any account or secret. I've never met a woman who could see through the armor with such fearless eyes." Isabel's pulse thundered. Fearless or foolish? "Maybe both," he said softly, his fingers barely grazing the small of her back. She laughed quietly, a sound full of conflicted emotion. Amid the swirl of art and influence, Isabel felt herself pulled deeper, not just into Dominic's world, but into a tempest of emotion she had long kept buried. When the night finally drew to a close, Dominic stepped outside with her beneath a canopy of ink-black sky and city stars. He took her hand with gentle strength, eyes locking onto hers in a moment that stopped time. "Tomorrow, Isabel," he said low and promising, "we begin again, and the veil will lift further." She squeezed his hand, a silent vow to meet whatever came next, with courage, with fire, and perhaps with a little less weariness than before. The dawn spilled cold light into Isabel's apartment, cutting through the remnants of restless sleep like a knife. She sat at her kitchen table, nursing a bitter black coffee, scrolling through the latest batch of documents and encrypted files she'd extracted from Dominic's sprawling business network. Each ledger was a tapestry of brilliance and shadows, profits that seemed too good to be clean, investments in companies that existed only on paper, charitable fronts that masked darker dealings. Yet beneath the surface layers of fraud and artifice, Isabel sensed an intricate web woven with precision, loyalty, and unspoken codes. This was no simple criminal enterprise. It was a kingdom cloaked in glitter but guarded by ancient rules. Her phone vibrated, a message from Elena flashing on the screen. "Be careful, ISA." Sometimes the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. The warning resonated with a sudden clarity. Isabel's heritage, steeped in the rhythms of honor, family allegiance, and sacrifice, clashed sharply with the merciless, transactional world she was probing. Later that day, she sat across from Dominic in his private study, a room filled with artifacts from distant lands, ivory carvings, woven tapestries, relics that whispered stories of heritage. The air between them thickened with unspoken tension. Dominic's voice broke the silence. "You dig deeper than you should." Isabel met his eyes evenly. "I have to. The surface tells only half the story." He sighed, a flash of vulnerability softening his sharp features. "There's a past you don't know, Isabel. A history that built this empire but also haunts it." "Then tell me," she said quietly. "I want to understand the man behind the glitter." Dominic hesitated, then leaned back, eyes narrowing as he began to unravel the tapestry of his past. A childhood shadowed by loss, a family bound by unyielding codes, a legacy he was forced to both embrace and escape. Isabel listened, every word peeling back layers of complexity she hadn't anticipated. Here was a man both forged and fractured by culture, ambition, and desire. Days turned into weeks as Isabel walked the thin line between observer and participant, her notes filled with contradictions, whispers of illegality juxtaposed with acts of genuine generosity, cold pragmatism softened by rare moments of tenderness. Dominic's personality revealed itself in facets: the ruthless businessman, the vulnerable son, the passionate lover. One night, in the quiet of his penthouse overlooking the city's shimmering lights, Isabel found herself drawn into a conversation unlike any before. "Why do you fight so hard to protect this facade?" she asked, tracing the outline of his jaw with a tentative finger. Dominic's eyes darkened with intensity. "Because behind the glitter, there's a man who fears being seen and losing everything." Their lips met then, slow and searching, a dance of passion and pain, a communion of souls seeking refuge. In that surrender, Isabel glimpsed the intoxicating paradox of Dominic's world, where power and vulnerability were inseparable, and where love was both a weapon and a salvation. The contrast between Dominic's polished exterior and the tempest behind his calm gaze fascinated Isabel. She had expected a predator behind the wealth, ruthless and unrepentant. But instead, she found profound paradox: a man preyed upon by his own demons, yet fiercely protective of the fragile parts he allowed no one to see. Her work dug deeper into the labyrinth of his empire, uncovering encrypted communications that suggested alliances stretching far beyond national borders. Each revelation was a piece of the puzzle, part threat, part salvation. One late evening, as rain tapped a soft rhythm against the penthouse windows, Isabel stared at the cascade of numbers and names flowing across the screen. Dominic's voice behind her startled her from concentration. "You still chase ghosts in the balance sheets," he said, his tone gently teasing but edged with a strange melancholy. She didn't turn immediately. Instead, she let the silence answer, acknowledging that the ghosts were as much his as Hayes. "You're not just investigating me, are you?" he pressed softly. Isabel finally met his eyes. "I'm trying to understand you and protect myself." He smiled, a fleeting curve that revealed a hint of gratitude. "Maybe one day you'll see the man, not the myth." Her heart fluttered with a warmth that made the cold glow of the monitors pale in comparison. Days later, during another one of Dominic's opulent soirees, Isabel observed the interplay of power and performance with increasing clarity. Behind every carefully curated smile lurked an undercurrent of jealousy, distrust, and fragile loyalty. Dominic moved through the crowd effortlessly, a master conductor orchestrating the symphony of ambition and desire, yet his attention remained tethered to Isabel. At one point, as the music swelled, he pulled her close, his breath hot against her ear. "Do you always wear your armor this tightly?" Isabel's laugh was wry. "It's my shield." His fingers traced an idle path along her spine. "Maybe it's time to lay it down." Their dance became less about the facade and more about the fragile trust building between them, the stolen glances, the whispered confessions, the electric tension that neither dared fully admit. Back in the quiet of his study after the party, the walls adorned with artifact from Dominic's past, the conversation turned intimately vulnerable. "Tell me about your family," Isabel prompted softly, sensing that beneath his stoic exterior lay wounds waiting to be shared. Dominic's hands trembled ever so slightly, a crack in the armor. "They taught me strength, but sometimes strength means bearing unbearable burdens alone." She reached out, her hand covering his. "You don't have to be alone." For the first time, he allowed himself a brittle smile. The moment was fleeting, fragile as fine crystal. Their lips met, a promise and a confession. Isabel felt herself surrendering to a desire that was no longer just lust or curiosity. It was an aching need for connection, understanding, redemption. Yet, in the shadows, the dangers of the investigation lurked, whispering reminders that every secret uncovered put them both at greater risk. The pressure was mounting like a storm brewing on a restless sea. Isabel sat in the austere conference room of her agency, the cold fluorescent lights doing nothing to soften the sharp words thrown at her by director Graves. "We need results, Ama. Dominic Varela is a kingpin, not some petty thief. If you don't bring us proof soon, this assignment ends, and so does your career." Isabel's gaze flickered to the darkened window, where the city's jagged skyline reflected her own fracturing composure. She clenched her fists under the table, feeling the weight of expectations, the suffocating lines between duty and desire tightening around her. "Yes, director, I understand." But inside, turmoil raged. Dominic was no easy target, not just because of his financial defenses, but because he was no stranger to her. In fact, he had become a part of the complicated emotional web she couldn't disentangle. Across town, Dominic's penthouse sparkled under chandeliers that cast prismatic light onto walls adorned with art and memories. He poured himself a glass of deep red wine, the silence around him heavy with unspoken tension. His phone buzzed, a message lighting up the screen. Isabel is slipping away. Don't lose her. His lips curved into a wry smile. Losing Isabel was never a risk he was willing to take. Later, when Isabel arrived, the air between them crackled, not just with desire, but an undercurrent of unspoken conflicts. I don't work well under threats, Isabel said, closing the door behind her, eyes fierce despite the exhaustion shadowing her face. Dominic stepped toward her, his presence overwhelming yet somehow grounding. Then don't work under theirs. Work with me. That's impossible, she whispered. You're the source I'm supposed to expose. He took her hands gently in his. Or the reason you keep going. In the sanctuary of the night, the boundaries dissolved. Their bodies spoke truths their words dared not. The intensity of their connection, raw, urgent, consuming, was a battlefield of love, lust, trust, and deception all at once. But with each encounter, the cost grew heavier. In the days that followed, Isabel uncovered a new thread in Dominic's empire, a secret offshore account linked to shadowy intermediaries. The deeper she probed, the more perilous the truth appeared. One evening, confronted with evidence that could dismantle everything Dominic had built, Isabel grappled with a crushing choice, loyalty to her mission or to the man who had claimed her heart. Dominic's voice on the phone was soft, coaxing, a lifeline. Trust is the most dangerous gamble of all. But I believe you play to win. Isabel closed her eyes, the truth sharp and inescapable. Could she risk everything on a gamble so perilous? The night came suddenly over the city, washing the skyline in indigo shadows pierced by thousands of lights. Isabel sat alone in her dimly lit apartment, the files on Dominic spread before her like battle plans, each sheet a reminder of the gulf growing between her heart and her mission. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Dominic. Meet me. We need to talk. Not about business. The words tugged at a fragile part of her resolve. At the dim glow of a private wine bar, Dominic was already waiting when she arrived, his expression unreadable. His tailored jacket bore the soft rumple of travel, and the intensity in his eyes seemed sharpened by recent battles, both internal and external. Isabel, he said quietly, gesturing to a secluded booth. Sit. She obeyed, every muscle taut with uncertainty. I know they're closing in, he said, voice low, and I can't protect you from the storm that's coming. Why do you care? Isabel challenged, daring to meet the vulnerability beneath his bravado. Because you're not just a mission to me, he confessed. You're the one truth I didn't expect to find. Her breath caught. It was dangerous and intoxicating, the admission unfurling new layers of risk. Days blurred into nights filled with whispered conversations and stolen touches, each encounter a desperate dance of passion entwined with suspicion. One evening, after a particularly heated meeting with her superiors pressing for progress, Isabel returned to Dominic's penthouse, raw and exposed. Without words, he drew her close, his body a shield against the relentless weight of her world. I want to know everything, he murmured against her skin. Not just a file. Me. She hesitated, walls trembling but hope flickering like a fragile flame. Trust isn't easy, she whispered, but maybe we're both better off risking it. Their union that night was a tempest, fierce, demanding, a collision of pent-up fear and longing that left them both breathless, vulnerable, and irrevocably tied. Yet beneath the fire, the shadows deepened. Isabel uncovered hard evidence linking Dominic's name to offshore accounts with ties to corrupt officials, a web tangled in greed and silence. When she confronted him, Dominic's composure fractured for a fleeting moment. Those accounts protect what's left of my family, he said bitterly. Sometimes the true cost of power is bearing the sins of those who came before. She saw the torment behind his eyes, the collision of legacy and survival. You can't hide forever, she warned softly. No, he admitted, but I need you with me when it all falls apart. The days that followed were a crucible. Isabel's loyalty strained under double weights, her dedication to justice and the man who had become the storm at her heart center. The temptation was a price paid with every stolen moment, every secret revealed, every breath held in suspended conflict. Isabel stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her agency's headquarters, the city sprawling beneath her like an endless labyrinth of secrets. The weight of the file in her hand felt heavier than ever, a dossier thick with evidence, but also with implications that eclipsed mere criminality. Her mind replayed the countless hours and whispered conversations, the moments of passion and confession with Dominic, the man she was supposed to expose but who had become something far more complicated. The door behind her opened softly. "Isabel." Director Graves' voice was measured but unyielding. She turned, expression guarded. "We have overwhelming pressure from the highest levels. They expect the operation to conclude imminently. You have the damning proof. What's the holdup?" Isabel held the file tighter. "It's not that simple." Graves stepped closer, voice low but firm. "Nothing is simple in this work. Pick a side, your career or your personal feelings." She forced a humorless laugh. "There's always a middle ground." Graves shook his head. "Not this time." Meanwhile, Dominic sat in the shadows of his private office, tension etched into every line of his face. The threat looming over him was not just Isabel's investigation. It was a sinister rival faction, hungry to dismantle his empire by any means necessary. His phone vibrated. A message from Marco, his trusted but battle-weary business partner. "They are moving in fast. We need Isabel." Dominic swallowed hard. Isabel was no longer just an investigator. She was a pivotal force in the storm that threatened to engulf him. That evening, Isabel met Dominic in a secluded garden hidden behind a centuries-old cathedral, a place where history and faith whispered between the ancient stones. "Why here?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Because it's a crossroads," Dominic said. "I sensei. And so are we." They sat beneath the gnarled branches of olive trees, the night air thick with the scent of earth and promise. "Isabel, you must choose. Expose me and destroy everything we built, risking the lives caught in between. Or stand with me and embrace the chaos." Her heart thundered. And what would that mean? "Risking it all," he said simply, "trusting in something neither of us can guarantee." Tears glistened in Isabel's eyes, the collision of duty and desire fracturing her resolve. "Your world is dangerous," she said, "but maybe it's mine too." In that crucible of choice, power, heritage, and love converged, demanding sacrifices neither was certain they could make. The olive trees swayed gently above them, casting shadows that mirrored the uncertainty in Isabel's heart. The ancient stones of the cathedral behind were silent witnesses to countless choices, sacrifices, and acts of faith. Tonight, they bore witness to another, a crossroads where love and duty collided with devastating force. Dominic's gaze searched hers, raw and unguarded. "You must understand, Isabel, this isn't just about money or power. It's about survival, a family, legacy, honor." She swallowed hard, the weight of his words resonating deep within her, echoes of her own upbringing and the complex web of cultural expectations she tried to reconcile with the modern world she inhabited. "Legacy can be a prison as easily as a crown," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "And sometimes the only way to break free is to accept the chains and learn how to wear them differently." A silence settled between them, thick with possibility and danger. Suddenly, Dominic's phone vibrated sharply, breaking the fragile bubble around them. He glanced at the screen, face tightening. "They are here," he said grimly. The rival faction. Isabel's heart lurched. The stakes were no longer abstract. They roared in the night, closing in. Without hesitation, she reached for his hand. Then we faced them together. Dominic squeezed her fingers. "I never wanted you to be part of this storm." "But I already am," she said fiercely, "and I'm not stepping back." The next hours blurred into a frenzy of whispered plans, encrypted calls, and guarded movements through shadowed streets. Isabel's analytical mind raced alongside her pounding heart as they strategized. Their alliance no longer secret. The lines between love and war, trust and suspicion dissolved into a primal fight for survival. At a clandestine safe house, Isabel watched Dominic rally his closest allies, strength tempered by desperation. "Your choice," Dominic murmured as they prepared to part for the night. "Maybe the only thing standing between ruin and redemption." Isabel met his eyes, her own shining with fierce determination. "Then I choose to stand." The dawn revealed a city poised on the edge of upheaval. Isabel and Dominic, once investigator and subject, now stood united at the crux of a battle far greater than themselves. Their worlds intertwined inexorably, woven with threads of culture, passion, and an unrelenting quest for truth and survival. The storm arrived with brutal ferocity, shattering the fragile peace that Isabel and Dominic had fought to build. Midnight sirens pierced the night as shadows moved with lethal intent, and the city's underbelly erupted in chaos. In the relative safety of the safe house, Isabel's hands trembled as she loaded her sidearm, eyes darting toward every dark corner. The weight of their decision pressed down relentlessly, the price of allegiance far greater than she had imagined. Dominic stood nearby, his face a mask of controlled fury and exhaustion. His normally poised demeanor fractured ever so slightly when he caught her gaze. "We underestimated them," he said grimly. "They don't just want to dismantle my empire, they want to destroy us." Isabel nodded, a cold fire igniting in her chest. "Then we fight." But as the night deepened, fractures began to appear, not just in their defenses, but within their own ranks. Marco, Dominic's trusted partner, revealed his hand, a secret deal struck in desperation. His betrayal was a knife twisted in wounds already raw. "You put me in a corner," Marco hissed, voice thick with resentment. "Choose between loyalty to Dominic or survival." Isabel's heart sank, betrayal striking close. This isn't just about survival anymore. "No," Marco spat bitterly. "It's about power. The only way forward is through sacrifice." Dominic's eyes flashed with fury. "You've endangered everything." The room crackled with tension, alliances shattered like fragile glass. The personal cost hit Isabel hardest when Elena, her sister, became collateral damage, a sudden, violent act that tore through Isabel's soul. The raw grief and rage fused with a determination, transforming her from reluctant participant to relentless warrior. Dominic held her close in the aftermath, their shared pain forging an unbreakable bond. "We're broken," he whispered, "but not beyond repair." She looked into his eyes, seeing her own scars reflected back, a mirror of love and loss. As dawn broke over a city scarred and uncertain, Isabel realized the path ahead was more treacherous than ever. Trust was scarce, the enemy both outside and within. Their journey had become a crucible, testing the limits of love, loyalty, and the human spirit. In the shadows of betrayal and loss, only one truth remained clear: survival demanded reckoning. The city bore scars both visible and invisible, walls marred by violence, neighborhoods silenced by fear, and souls heavy with loss. Isabel walked the quiet streets, the echoes of past chaos still ringing faintly in her ears like a mournful requiem. Months had passed since the fractures tore through her world, and though time had dulled the sharp edges of grief, the ache beneath remained a constant companion. She had returned to the agency, but the sterile environment felt alien, a stark contrast to the turbulent, passionate life she'd left behind. Her work was meticulous, detached, but late at night, when quiet pressed in, memories of Dominic haunted her. Dominic, too, was a man transformed by the crucible. His empire fractured, enemies emboldened, and trust a fragile ember, he sought a path amid ruin. In the solitude of his family estate, Dominic wrestled with demons, both past and present. The ghosts of his lineage intertwined with the wounds inflicted by recent betrayals, leaving him hollow yet unbroken. When Isabel reappeared in his life unexpectedly, at a faded cafe where once they had shared dreams, the spark rekindled, tempered by pain and hope. Their reunion was tentative, layered with unspoken apologies, guarded desires, and a mutual craving for connection. "I never stopped looking for you," Dominic confessed, eyes searching haze. Isabel's voice trembled. "Neither did I." They spoke for hours, of mistakes, forgiveness, and the fragile promise of healing. Yet, beneath their tentative hope lay the cultural currents that had shaped them, the weight of family honor, the echoes of sacrifice, and the enduring longing for belonging. Together, they navigated this delicate terrain, learning to rebuild trust slowly, each moment an ember mid ashes, fragile but alive. But the past was never far. Rivals still lurked in shadows, and allies remained wary. Their journey toward redemption was a battle, a test of resilience, passion, and the capacity to love despite scars. As they stood side by side against the fading twilight, Isabel realized that sometimes the deepest wounds forge the strongest bonds, and the fiercest flames could rise from ashes. The aftermath of Marco's betrayal shattered the fragile cohesion within their circle. Isabel stood motionless as Dominic confronted his former ally. The cold steel of betrayal hung heavy in the air. "You took everything from me," Dominic said, voice low but piercing. "And for what?" "A false promise of safety." Marco's jaw tightened. "You left me no choice. If I lost you, I lost everything." Dominic's eyes darkened. "Then you lost more than you imagined." Isabel watched as a rift grew, an unspoken fracture that no amount of loyalty could mend. In the hush following, the distant wail of sirens approached, a herald of the dangers closing in. Later, Isabel received a call that twisted her insides with dread. Elena had been caught in the crossfire of a violent street altercation linked to Dominic's enemies. In the sterile hospital room, Isabel grasped her sister's trembling hand, bitter tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. "Elena," she whispered, voice fractured, "stay with me." Elena's tired eyes fluttered open, a faint smile breaking through the pain. "Isa," she croaked, "you're stronger than you think." The moment crystallized Isabel's resolve. It was no longer just a mission or a personal struggle. It was a battle for everything she held dear. Returning to Dominic, the raw vulnerability between them was palpable. "We're broken," Dominic muttered against her hair, "but sometimes broken things can be rebuilt stronger." Isabel pulled away, searching his eyes, finding the same scars mirrored in her own. "Trust won't come easily again," she said softly. "But love," he countered, "might be worth the risk." The days ahead were a crucible of tension and fragile alliances. Isabel's investigation deepened amid whispered threats and coded messages. Dominic's empire trembled under the violent siege of rivals and traitors within. They moved in tandem, a dance of strategy and survival, passion and pain. Yet beneath the surface, the emotional toll threatened to claim them both. One evening, Isabel stood alone on a balcony, the city lights flickering below like distant stars. Her thoughts raced through the fractured past, the uncertain present, and the perilous future. Could their love endure when everything else was crumbling? Could trust survive in a world where betrayal was currency? The only certainty was that the fight was far from over, and sometimes the hardest fractures reveal the deepest strength. The cafe was tucked away from the city's relentless pulse, a quiet refuge where light spilled softly over worn wooden tables, and the air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and old books. It was a world apart, a place where Isabel and Dominic could, if only briefly, shed the weight of their tangled past. Dominic arrived first, seated at a corner table surrounded by memories. His fingers traced faint circles on the chipped ceramic cup, as if grounding himself in something tangible. When Isabel entered, she moved with the same poised grace that had captivated him from the start, but beneath her calm exterior was a river of emotions, fear, hope, regret, flowing beneath the surface. For a heartbeat, they just looked at each other, the space between them heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Dominic broke the silence. "I never imagined we'd find a moment like this again," he said quietly. She nodded, voice steady but soft. "Neither did I. But here we are." Their conversation unfolded slowly, like fragile threads weaving back together. Isabel told of the nights haunted by loss, the struggle to reconcile duty with desire, and the fractures that had threatened to break her. Dominic spoke of ghosts, of family legacies that chained him, of enemies who sought to claim his ruin, and of the loneliness that success had never cured. At moments, their hands brushed across the table, tentative contact like embers reaching for flame. "We carry so much with us," Isabel whispered, "but maybe carrying together makes it lighter." Dominic's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't want to be alone anymore." Yet, their reunion was also a delicate dance around the cultural currents that shaped them. Isabel's heritage, steeped in traditions of loyalty and sacrifice, clashed at times with Dominic's own struggles to define honor beyond inherited expectations. They debated, sometimes argued, but always sought understanding. "I want to honor who we are," Dominic confessed one evening, "but I'm tired of living in the shadow of the past." Isabel reached across, her fingers warm on his cheek. "Then let's create a future that honors us both." Amid this fragile hope, dangers lingered. Rumors spread that Dominic's rivals were regrouping, looking for another opening. Isabel's work at the agency kept her vigilant. caught between protecting the man she loved and serving the demands of justice. Still, they clung to each other, two embers glowing against a cold world. As twilight deepened, Dominic squeezed Isabel's hand. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." She smiled, a small beacon of light and resilience. Together. The night was alive with sounds, soft music drifting from a ballroom below, murmurs of silk-clad guests, the clink of fine crystal glasses. But for Isabel and Dominic, suspended in the quiet of the dimly lit private room, the world had shrunk to nothing but the space between them. Dominic's hand cradled Isabel's face, thumb tracing slow circles on her cheek. His eyes, dark and profound, searched hers as if seeking a final truth written there. "This is our moment," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "No promises, no regrets, just a dance." Isabel nodded, breath catching. There was fragility to him now. Beneath the layers of power and desire, a man stripped bare by love and loss, standing on the edge of all they had fought for. Their bodies moved in sync as they stepped onto the floor, the music swelling around them, wrapping them in a cocoon of rhythm and heat. Every step, every touch, was both a celebration and a farewell, a last embrace before the unknown. As they danced, memories flashed, shared laughter in sunlit gardens, whispered confessions beneath starlit skies, the fierce battles waged in boardrooms and bedrooms alike. Here was a culmination of all those moments, distilled into a single, exquisite unfolding. Dominic's lips brushed Isabel's temple. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "know that you change everything." Isabel's hands tightened around his neck. "And you change me." The song reached a crescendo, their movements both urgent and tender. The line between passion and desperation blurred as the night unfolded in a symphony of emotion. But outside their fragile world, peril loomed. Rumors of renewed threats, whispers of betrayal, and the relentless demands of duty pressed closer. When the music faded and the dance ended, they stood breathless, knowing the moment could not last. Dominic pulled Isabel close, forehead resting against hers. Together, he vowed, no matter what. She smiled through tears, the ache of love and impending loss mingling in her heart. Together, she echoed, the final hours were a whirlwind, decisions made in shadows, sacrifices embraced, and promises whispered into the night. Their story did not end in perfect harmony, but in a complex, beautiful crescendo of love's endurance and human fragility. As dawn broke over the city, casting golden light on broken dreams and hopeful beginnings, Isabel and Dominic faced the uncertain future, bound by the last dance and the unyielding promise of each other. Thanks for watching Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means a lot to us. You can also share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so.